Well, good morning and welcome to the start of another week and another series of Bible talks, which this week are going to be brought to you by Debbie and I. And we've decided to choose two Old Testament characters and to share with you some of our thoughts about them. Today I'm going to start with Moses, and Debbie later in the week will bring us some news about Elijah. Well, let me begin then with Moses today. But just before I get down to the actual detail, let me give you some of the historical background to the book of Moses, to the book of Exodus. You see, the children of Israel, descendants of Abraham and God's chosen people, had been invited by Joseph, the man with the colourful coat, to move into Egypt, and there he had become a great ruler under Pharaoh. And the Hebrew peoples had grown into a very large nation, quite different though to the native Egyptians. Now fast forward some 400 years to a time when Joseph and his many brothers had died. We had a new Pharaoh who was concerned that God's people were now becoming too numerous and becoming a bit of a threat to the Egyptian kingdom. And so the Pharaoh began to treat God's people rather hardly and began to treat them like slaves and oppressively. And God's people became generally mistreated. They needed to be rescued. And then Pharaoh took another cruel step. He asked his midwives to ensure that all of the boys born to the Hebrew nation were to be killed, in case the nation became too powerful and upset the political balance in the Egyptian kingdom. That's the context into which Moses was born, the baby son of Jochebed and Amram. So I'm going to turn now to the Bible, to Exodus chapter 2, and reading verses 1 to 10. The birth of Moses. Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the banks of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the river bank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to fetch it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the woman took the baby and nursed him. And when the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water." And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, I wonder what thoughts you had as you listened to that reading from Exodus. You see, although nobody realized it at the beginning, Moses was born for a purpose, for a specific task. He was chosen by God to oversee the first part of God's rescue plan for his people, to rescue them from oppression in Egypt and to lead them through the wilderness into the promised land. In passing, I wonder if you noticed the similarities between the birth of Moses and the birth of Jesus many years later. See, both were born on earth as infant boys. Both were born into physical danger, with death threats hanging over them, and Moses threatened by Pharaoh, Jesus threatened by Herod. Both infants were innocent, but seen as threats to the ruling authorities, who very much feared them. Both infants loved and protected by a group of loving, caring and compassionate women, and both born to bring God's plan to fruition, a plan to rescue his people in the world. Lots and lots of similarities between the birth of Moses and the birth of Jesus, although clearly there were important differences too. But now let's focus in more detail on the birth of Moses in particular. You see, Moses should have been killed at birth, according to Pharaoh's instructions. But he wasn't, because he had God's protective hand upon him from the outset. Baby Moses was surrounded by women who were loving, compassionate and courageous. His mother protected him by hiding him away for 3 months. And after that, she entrusted him to God by placing him in a watertight basket and hiding him among the reeds along the banks of the Nile River. And his sister, Miriam, watched over him from a safe distance. And then we hear that Pharaoh's daughter came to bathe and discovered the basket, and ordering a slave girl to retrieve it, she felt instant compassion on the baby, which she clearly identified as belonging to the Hebrew people. And then Sister Miriam stepped forward and made that very bold suggestion. Do you remember it? It said, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" Pharaoh's daughter agreed, and Miriam recruited the baby's natural mother, Jochebed, who was then paid to nurse her own child until he grew older. Pharaoh's daughter later claimed the boy as her own, naming him Moses because she had drawn him out of the water. And, once again, we can draw parallels, can't we, with Jesus emerging from the waters of the Jordan at the very start of his adult ministry. Moses grew into adulthood. Isn't it an intriguing story? But all part of God's plan to place Moses in a position where one day he would be able to exert persuasive power and influence over Pharaoh, just as Joseph had done centuries earlier. And God's plan, when we realise it, was put into operation through ordinary people: the loving mother, the courageous midwives, the caring and bold sister, the defiant and compassionate daughter of Pharaoh. All had learnt their lines and played their part in rescuing this infant from certain death. And that child was to grow and become himself a major player in God's rescue mission. I wonder how God might be inviting us to play a part in his world today. It might not be a major role like that given to Moses, but great advances are often made by many people doing their minor parts really well. I wonder how God might be asking us to support the many people who are being abused and mistreated in our world today. Indeed, what might we help? What might we do to rescue them from? And do we have the compassion, the courage, the strength to face opposition and to help overcome the troubles that people around us might be facing? That's the challenge that was given to Moses when he grew up. I wonder if we too will take risks for the sake of others. Will we stand firm to oppose and defy those who abuse and oppress other people. Tough call. Will we stand firm to do what we know is right in God's eyes? I guess we've all sat back at some time and said, I wish we could contribute to God's work in this neighbourhood, only to conclude that there's so much to do. We don't know where to start, and what we could do would contribute very little. Well, today I just want to leave you with this one thought. Just look what was achieved in today's story when just a few people with godly hearts decided to work together, contributing their efforts in a small but a very significant way, and then allowing God to take the strain to further his mighty plan for his precious people. Well, more about Moses tomorrow. Hope you'll be able to join me. Same time, same place. In the meantime, have a good day and may God watch over you. Take care. Bye-bye.